Imagine this, a country smaller than New York City, with no natural resources, surrounded by much larger neighbors, and sitting on one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. By all logic, it should be vulnerable. It should be at the mercy of others. But that country is Singapore, and instead of being weak, it has built one of the most impressive defense systems anywhere. Some even call it home to the best militia in the world. So here's the big question. Can Singapore actually defend itself? And if so, how did it pull off this miracle? Stay with me, because this is not just a military story. It's a story of survival, discipline, and strategy that every nation can learn from. Chapter 1. A country with no room for mistakes. In 1965, Singapore was thrust into independence not by choice, but by circumstance. Overnight, it found itself a tiny island nation, stripped of its ties to Malaysia, without natural resources and without a strong military to defend itself. Even its water supply came from beyond its borders. To make matters worse, the young nation was surrounded by much larger neighbors who doubted it could survive on its own. Most countries in that situation would have collapsed. But for Singapore, failure was not an option. Its leaders understood a hard truth. Without security, there is no survival. The nation couldn't afford to wait, couldn't afford to stumble, and certainly couldn't afford to be complacent. This urgency became the heartbeat of Singapore's identity. Every policy, every budget decision, every national priority had to answer one question. Will this keep Singapore safe and alive? Defense was not a luxury. It was the foundation on which everything else, from jobs to schools to housing, would stand. That's why in those fragile early years, the government didn't just think about soldiers and weapons. It thought about creating resilience in the people, unity in society, and the discipline to act as one nation. Singapore's survival depended on speed, clarity, and determination. Because in a world where one wrong move could mean the end, this small nation had no room for mistakes. Chapter 2. The People's Army, National Service. One of the boldest moves Singapore ever made was the introduction of National Service, NS, in 1967. Instead of depending on a small professional army, the government decided that every male citizen and second-generation permanent resident would serve their nation. At just 18 years old, young men are drafted into 2 years of rigorous training, whether in the Army, Navy, Air Force, police, or civil defense. This system was not just about building soldiers. It was about building resilience, discipline, and a sense of shared responsibility. By the time they finish their service, these young men are not only trained fighters, but also reserve soldiers, ready to be called back whenever the nation needs them. The impact is enormous. Nearly every Singaporean household has someone who has worn the uniform. Defense is not distant. It's part of everyday life. Parents understand it, sons live it, and communities respect it. It ties the nation together. Today, this system gives Singapore one of the highest mobilization rates in the world. With a population of just about 6 million, more than 900,000 active and reserve personnel stand ready. That's almost 1 in every 7 people. For perspective, few nations on Earth can match that level of readiness. In essence, Singapore didn't just build an army, it created a people's army, a force that blends military strength with national unity, turning its greatest weakness, small size, into a strength that makes every citizen a guardian of the nation. Chapter 3. Discipline that feels like DNA. Step into a Singapore military camp, and you'll immediately notice one thing: discipline. Boots are spotless, uniforms are crisp, and routines run like clockwork. This is no accident. From the moment recruits begin national service, they are drilled to understand that in Singapore, every soldier counts. Unlike larger countries that can afford numbers, Singapore cannot. With such a small population, there is no room for carelessness, no margin for sloppy work. That's why the system doesn't just train soldiers physically, it sharpens them mentally. Punctuality, order, and precision are treated as sacred values, because in war, a single mistake could decide the nation's fate. Recruits wake up early, march in perfect formation, clean weapons to perfection, and repeat drills until they become second nature. Over time, this builds not just habits, but a culture where excellence becomes the default. Even outside the military, this mindset spills into civilian life. Whether it's how Singaporeans manage businesses, run schools, or keep their streets clean. In short, discipline has become part of Singapore's DNA. It is the invisible armor that protects the nation. Every soldier is expected to be sharp, skilled, and efficient, because quality, not quantity, is Singapore's greatest weapon. This collective belief that we cannot afford mistakes is what turns ordinary citizens into extraordinary defenders. And it's one of the reasons why Singapore, despite its size, commands respect from militaries across the world. Chapter 4. The technology edge. Singapore may be a small nation, but when it comes to defense spending, it plays in the League of Giants. Each year, billions of dollars are allocated to ensure the country has not just an army, but a smart army. The reasoning is simple. Singapore cannot outnumber its opponents, so it must outthink and out-equip them. This strategy is clear in the hardware it buys. The Republic of Singapore Air Force operates some of the world's most advanced fighter jets, including the F-35 Lightning II, a stealth aircraft capable of striking before an enemy even knows it's there. Beneath the waters, its fleet of modern submarines patrols silently, giving the island nation a hidden shield. But it doesn't stop at land, sea, and air. Singapore is also investing heavily in cyber defense, recognizing that future wars may be fought with keyboards as much as with guns. Specialized units monitor digital threats, ready to counter hackers who could disrupt power grids, banks, or communications. What makes this approach remarkable is how calculated it is. Instead of spreading resources thin, Singapore carefully selects systems that maximize deterrence. Every purchase is meant to make potential enemies think twice. While some nations boast about the size of their armies, Singapore takes pride in its precision. It knows that one well-trained soldier with cutting-edge equipment can be more effective than 10 without it. In this way, Singapore turns its small size into an advantage. Lean, smart, and always prepared. Chapter 5. The militia that's always ready. When people hear the word militia, they often picture unorganized groups with makeshift weapons. But in Singapore, the story is very different. Here, the militia is not just a backup force, it is the backbone of national defense. Thanks to national service, Singapore has created a unique system where every able-bodied man is trained, tested, and then placed into the reserves. This means that even after completing their 2 years of active duty, citizens remain part of the defense network for decades. They return regularly for refresher training, weapons practice, and large-scale mobilization drills. The result? A force that is always ready. Imagine this. On Monday morning, Singapore looks like any other bustling financial hub. Banks busy, schools open, families shopping. But within 24 hours, if needed, tens of thousands of reservists could slip into uniform, report to bases, and take up arms. Roads could be secured, neighborhoods protected, and key infrastructure guarded with remarkable speed. This ability to transform from peace to defense almost overnight is what makes Singapore's militia stand out globally. It's not an army that exists only on paper. It's woven into everyday life. Families understand the call, employers support it, and society respects it. In essence, Singapore has built what many call the best militia in the world, a citizen army that is disciplined, professional, and instantly mobilized. For a small nation, that speed and unity is the ultimate shield. Chapter 6. Geography, a blessing and a curse. Singapore's geography is both its greatest weakness and one of its hidden strengths. The island measures just about 50 kilometers across and 27 kilometers north to south, smaller than many major cities in the world. At first glance, this looks like a military nightmare. If an enemy were to invade, there would be nowhere to retreat, no mountains to shield the population, and no vast countryside to regroup in. A single strike could threaten the entire nation. But here's where Singapore's genius comes in. What seems like a curse can also be turned into a blessing. Because the island is compact, its armed forces can deploy across the country within hours. Supply lines are short, coordination is faster, and communication is smoother. Unlike bigger nations where troops might take days to move from one region to another, Singapore can mobilize its forces to defend every inch of its territory almost instantly. The city-state has also turned geography into an asset by fortifying its coastlines, ports and air bases, ensuring that any hostile force would be detected the moment it approaches. Advanced radar, surveillance systems, and rapid response units make up for the lack of physical space. So while the small size leaves Singapore vulnerable to sudden attacks, it also means the country can respond with unmatched speed and precision. Geography may be a double-edged sword, but Singapore has learned to wield it with remarkable efficiency. Chapter 7. Neighbors and Realities. No discussion about Singapore's defense can ignore its neighborhood. To the north lies Malaysia, a country more than 400 times its size in landmass. To the south, Indonesia, an archipelago of over 17,000 islands and a population of nearly 300 million. Against these giants, Singapore looks like a dot on the map. From the very beginning, Singapore's leaders understood a hard reality. It could never hope to match its neighbors, soldier for soldier or tank for tank. Instead, its survival depends on a simple but powerful strategy: deterrence. The goal is not to fight endless wars, but to make any potential aggressor pause and think, is this really worth it? To achieve this, Singapore invests in cutting-edge technology, world-class training, and lightning-fast mobilization, ensuring that even a larger neighbor would face heavy losses in the event of conflict. The message is clear. Attacking Singapore would not be a quick victory, it would be a costly gamble. Beyond the military, Singapore also practices careful diplomacy. It works hard to maintain good ties with both Malaysia and Indonesia, while building strong defense partnerships with global powers like the United States and Australia. This balance ensures that Singapore is never isolated. In the end, Singapore's defense posture is not about defeating larger nations in a drawn-out war. It's about preventing one from ever starting. For a small country in a tough neighborhood, deterrence is survival. Chapter 8. Beyond Guns and Tanks. Total defense. When most people think of defense, they picture tanks, fighter jets, and soldiers. But Singapore goes far beyond that. Its survival strategy is built on the concept of total defense, a framework introduced in 1984 that prepares the entire nation, not just the military, for any threat. Total defense rests on 5 pillars. 1. Military defense, a strong, modern armed force ready to respond to any attack. 2. Civil defense, citizens trained in first aid, emergency drills, and crisis response, so that ordinary people can save lives during disasters or attacks. 3. Economic defense, building a resilient economy that can withstand shocks, from global recessions to trade disruptions, ensuring Singaporeans never face shortages. 4. Social defense, protecting harmony in a multiracial society so divisions cannot be exploited by outside forces. 5. Psychological defense, instilling mental toughness and national pride so citizens never lose the will to defend their home, no matter the pressure. In plain words, total defense means every Singaporean is a defender, a soldier guarding the border, a doctor treating the wounded, a shopkeeper keeping supplies running, or a teacher fostering unity, all play a role. This all-of-society model ensures that Singapore cannot be broken easily. Even if its enemies attack militarily, the nation's strength runs deeper in its people, its economy, and its spirit. For Singapore, defense is not just about fighting wars. It's about making the nation unshakable. Chapter 9. Training with the best. Singapore may be small, but it refuses to think small when it comes to training its forces. The nation understands that to survive, its soldiers must be exposed to more than the island's limited terrain. That's why Singapore regularly joins large-scale military exercises with some of the world's most advanced armies, including the United States, Australia, India, and several NATO allies. Because Singapore has no deserts, vast seas, or mountain ranges, its troops travel abroad to train in those environments. Soldiers march through Australia's wide-open outback, practice armored maneuvers in Germany, and fly jets in the expansive skies of the U.S. They learn jungle warfare not only in Southeast Asia, but also in challenging terrains across the globe. This international training builds versatility. A Singaporean pilot can handle dogfights over open oceans, while a commando can navigate dense jungles with equal skill. The message is clear. No matter where the battlefield is, Singapore will not be caught unprepared. It's like a small boxer sparring with heavyweight champions. Every session makes him sharper, tougher, and more confident. By training alongside the world's best, Singapore's forces absorb lessons in tactics, coordination, and technology that few small nations ever access. And when these soldiers return home, they bring back world-class expertise, turning Singapore's compact military into a force that punches far above its weight. Chapter 10, The Psychological Edge Beyond Weapons and Strategies, lies something just as important: mindset. In Singapore, children grow up knowing that one day they or their brothers, fathers, and uncles will wear the uniform. It's not just a career path for a select few, it's a shared national duty. This creates a powerful psychological bond. Defense isn't a distant concept handled by someone else. It's personal. Every family has a son who trained in the jungle, a brother who flew in military drills, or a father who once stood guard at the border. The military becomes woven into the nation's identity. That mindset, this is our home and we must defend it, creates unity that statistics can't measure. While other countries may debate conscription or struggle with detachment between civilians and soldiers, Singapore builds solidarity through shared sacrifice. Even employers and schools understand this duty. Companies make space for reservists to leave work for training. Communities respect men who return each year for service. The message is clear. Defending Singapore is not just a soldier's job, it's everybody's responsibility. This psychological edge may be invisible, but it's one of Singapore's greatest weapons. It ensures that in times of crisis, citizens won't hesitate or waver. Instead, they will stand together, disciplined, determined, and ready. And that unity, born from duty, makes Singapore's militia strong in ways no enemy can calculate on a battlefield map. Chapter 11, Critics and Concerns. Of course, no defense system is without its challenges, and Singapore is not immune to criticism. Some observers argue that its heavy reliance on conscription could become a weakness in the future. Will younger generations, raised in comfort and stability, still feel the same urgency to serve with discipline and sacrifice? Will national service continue to inspire pride, or could it start to feel like a burden? Others point to Singapore's sheer size, or rather, its lack of it. In the event of a full-scale invasion by a much larger power, could this island truly hold its ground? With limited land and resources, some skeptics question whether even the best-trained militia could withstand a long war of attrition. There are also concerns about the financial cost. Singapore spends a significant portion of its budget on defense, and critics sometimes ask whether so much should be invested in weapons and training instead of social programs. But Singapore's leadership has a consistent answer. The risks of under-preparation are far greater than the costs of readiness. Complacency could be fatal for a small nation surrounded by uncertainties. That's why the country continues to emphasize discipline, advanced training, and constant innovation. No system is flawless, but Singapore's philosophy is simple: acknowledge the risks, address the weaknesses, and never stop preparing. Because in a world where mistakes could be catastrophic, readiness is the only true insurance. Chapter 12, Stories that Inspire. Behind the statistics and strategies are the human stories that truly reveal Singapore's strength. Every year, young recruits enter basic military training where they endure grueling jungle survival courses. Imagine 18-year-olds, many of whom have never camped outdoors, now learning to live off the land, catching rainwater, cooking with firewood, and navigating thick tropical terrain with nothing but a compass. These moments forge resilience that lasts a lifetime. Then there are the reservists, men in their 30s, 40s, and even 50s, who leave behind careers, businesses, and families to return for weeks of refresher training. Employers adjust schedules, children wave goodbye, and spouses carry extra burdens at home. All because serving the nation comes first. That quiet sacrifice speaks louder than any parade. Some stories are especially moving, like soldiers who push through injuries to complete their duties, or units that continue exercises in pounding rain, soaked to the bone but refusing to quit. These are not just drills, they are demonstrations of willpower. What shines through is this: Singapore's defense is not built on numbers or vast armies. It is built on dedication, unity, and determination. The true power lies not in the weapons they carry, but in the spirit they embody. And that spirit, the belief that this is our home and we will protect it, is what makes Singapore's military one of the most inspiring in the world. Chapter 13, The Future. Cyber and beyond war is no longer fought only with tanks, ships, and fighter jets. In today's world, battles can begin with a single line of malicious code. A hacker, thousands of miles away, could shut down airports, disable banking systems, or plunge a city into darkness, all without firing a shot. Singapore understands this reality better than most. That's why the nation has invested heavily in cyber defense, making it one of the most advanced in Asia. Specialized units within the Singapore Armed Forces and national agencies monitor networks around the clock, hunting for signs of intrusion. Their mission is not just to respond, but to prevent attacks before they happen. Singapore's cyber strategy goes hand in hand with its traditional defense. Just as the Army guards its borders, cyber units guard the nation's digital frontiers. This ensures that in any future conflict, Singapore will not be crippled by hackers trying to paralyze its infrastructure. But it doesn't stop there. The nation is also preparing for the rise of autonomous drones, artificial intelligence in warfare, and space-based technology. From defending satellites to training in electronic warfare, Singapore aims to stay ahead of the curve. The philosophy is simple. If threats are evolving, so must the defenders. By being ready on land, at sea, in the air, and now in cyberspace, Singapore ensures it remains a fortress, not just of steel and concrete, but of digital resilience too. Chapter 14, Lessons for the World. What can the rest of the world learn from a nation as small as Singapore? The first lesson is clear. Size does not decide strength. In a world where global powers often dominate headlines, Singapore proves that even the smallest countries can command respect if they plan wisely. The second lesson is the power of discipline, technology, and unity. While many nations spend billions on armies, yet struggle with corruption, inefficiency, or lack of coordination. Singapore shows what happens when every soldier is trained with precision, every purchase is strategic, and every citizen feels invested in defense. It's not about having the biggest army, it's about having the most effective one. The third and perhaps most important lesson is about mindset. Survival begins in the mind. For Singaporeans, defense is not optional or abstract. It is personal. This collective mentality, that everyone has a role to play in protecting the nation, turns vulnerability into strength. For larger nations, the takeaway is just as relevant. No country can afford complacency. No society can assume it is immune to threats. Whether it's military, economic, or cyber challenges, preparedness is the difference between fragility and resilience. In the end, Singapore is not just defending its borders, it's teaching the world a timeless truth. The key to survival is not size or resources, but the willpower to endure and the discipline to prepare. That is the real genius behind its defense. Conclusion: can Singapore defend itself? So let's return to the question we began with. Can Singapore really defend itself? The answer is a resounding yes, but not for the reasons you might expect. It's not because Singapore has the largest army, or endless soldiers, or boundless land. It's because Singapore has built something far more powerful, a defense system rooted in discipline, technology, unity, and mindset. This tiny nation has created one of the most efficient, well-prepared, and respected militias in the world. Every citizen plays a role. Every soldier is trained to the highest standard, and every policy is designed with survival in mind. Bigger nations may have more resources, but few can match the sharpness and cohesion of Singapore's model. So the next time you glance at a map and see that little red dot, remember, beneath its skyscrapers and gleaming streets lies a people's army, disciplined, determined, and ready. And that is why many believe Singapore is home to the best militia in the world. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Singapore's model of national service and total defense could be applied in bigger countries? Or does it only work because Singapore is small and tightly organized? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every one of them. And if you enjoyed this story of resilience and strategy, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more powerful lessons from nations around the world, And ring the bell so you never miss the next one. Because sometimes the smallest nations carry the biggest lessons for us all.